Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Thursday and Success episode here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. This week we have with us Matthias Kostwein. Hey Matthias, welcome back.
Hi, thank you.
So one thing, if you haven't heard the past 3 episodes, Matthias is actually a product owner, not a Scrum Master. So this is a very special episode. We'll talk about what a successful product owner is from Matthias' perspective later on in this episode. But before we dive into that, we also want to hear, Matthias, from your product owner perspective, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
I'm going to give an answer now that will make most Scrum Masters cringe, I'm pretty sure. I don't care what the format of the retro is. What I find much more important is that we take the core reason behind the retrospective to heart and really genuinely try to stay constructive and productive. And that's why I'm a big fan of changing formats. I know, and I've seen it in every single team I've been, whenever my product owner, my Scrum Masters try and say, let's try a different retro. 90% of the time, the team was like, yeah, but we like the retro the way it is. Why do we need to do something new? And then I always say, like, look, we need to change things because you guys are doing it by the numbers. I want you to really think about it, why we're doing this. I want you to think, how can we become really better and improve ourselves? How can we pinpoint what's not working? And so I don't really care what the format is, as long as we change it often enough to avoid it become painting by numbers. But to be honest, the funniest one is a meme retrospective I've had so far, just using memes to describe everything. You need to have the right team for it, but it can work really well.
So how do you do it? Do you come up with the memes right then and there?
Yes, exactly. You have the question, and then you just need to find memes to describe the situation, like what went well, or create memes. It takes a bit longer because you need some time and you need a team that has an intrinsic understanding. But if you have a team that is meme savvy, it's really, really great. I like it.
All right, that's a great suggestion. I bet that's going to be a lot of fun
yes.
if it works out. Okay, but I do have a second question regarding retro. So this is your favorite retro as a PM, or a PO rather, product owner. But of course, you work with many Scrum Masters. You've seen what Scrum Masters are good at and not so good at when it comes to the retrospectives. And from the perspective of a product owner, I'm guessing you have a retrospective that you think product owners, sooner or later, earlier in the project or later in the project, should ask their Scrum Masters to run. What is that?
A client retrospective. I have found it is really, really great for the client and team relationship to have a retrospective together, to really involve the clients, have the key stakeholders in there. You don't have to have the entire team there. Sometimes it's enough to have the key people that have contact with the client, so a tech lead or a QA lead, but you can also have the entire team. But it's really good to share this with the client, to also make them understand what the issues in the team are, so that they not just only talk with you as the product owner, but they also start understanding and learn the faces behind the screen, so to speak. Is they understand that there are people on the other side. And when they're putting pressure on a team, they're not just putting pressure on some distant implementing team that is sitting somewhere in the world, but that they are putting pressure on real people. So especially in remote work and in an agency-based setting, I've had great experiences with that.
Yeah, it is quite important to know who they're putting pressure on, because if you don't know the people, it's just a number, right?
Yes.
It's 5 developers I'm paying for. Make them work harder.
Exactly.
But if it's Mary and Joe and Abe, like, then you know, okay,
yeah,
fine.
Exactly.
Let's not do it this sprint then.
You'd think twice about making them work over the weekend if you know that Bob has a daughter that he needs to get to. But if it's just one of the 5 developers, what does the client care if they work over the weekend or over Christmas?
They're developers, right? They're in a cave anyway.
Yes. No
Right,
sunlight.
that was a joke,
Just
everybody. That
development.
was a joke. Don't take it seriously. All right, Matthias. So next we talk about success. And of course, because you are a product owner and this is a product owner centric week, we want to hear from you. What does it mean in your mind to be a successful product owner?
So for me, being a successful product owner has a couple of cornerstones. One of them is servant leadership. I really think that with being a product owner comes a certain leadership responsibility, just as with a Scrum Master or a tech lead in the project. You do have a certain amount of responsibility for your team and you need to be aware of it. And that is really important that you lead not as someone who tells people where to go, but help them reach the destination they're going to. On a more practical standpoint, though, having a strong business focus, encouraging your team to set sprint goals, and supporting them in developing a culture of pride in finishing their sprints, keeping them on track constantly, communicating the vision, is to make them a lot more involved in the team, to not stand apart. Like, unfortunately, POs have done a lot of times. And once I joined my first team, I heard the nicest compliment I've ever gotten as a PO, which was, Matthias, you're the first PO that I've ever felt is a proper part of the team. So that was really important for me. Be a part of the team, not stand apart, and represent the client, yes, but also be aware that it is your team.
Yeah, it is your team. And if they are proud of what they're doing, then you as the PO will be proud of what they are doing too.
Exactly.
There is one thing that I want to pick on a little bit more and hear your perspective. You said encourage your team to set sprint goals. Now, I've heard from product owners and team members alike that, yeah, why should we have sprint goals? We already know what stories we need to do anyway. I want to hear your perspective. Why is, in your mind, important for a product owner to focus on and help the team define sprint goals?
So, in one of the early episodes, I talked that I'm a huge fantasy and sci-fi reader and a bit of a nerd. So storytelling is massively important to me. And that goes for user stories. You need to tell a story to get people involved. People do not care about an interface. I mean, some very, very technically minded people might, but the majority of people do not care about an interface.
Especially the client will probably not care.
Exactly. The client does not even care why. But they will care about their user. They will care about the story that user tells. So, and the same is with the sprint goal. You're not just implementing some random tickets. You're working towards a goal. You're setting a narrative for you and your team. And people become invested in a narrative. They don't become invested in individual tickets. They don't care about ticket 2750. They care about finally implementing that one thing that's going to help the customer. They care about the story behind that, the narrative. And that's really why I think this is massively important and separates a good Scrum Master from a great one.
Absolutely. I really like the aspect of narrative building, because it is true that people can overcome great obstacles if they have a narrative they can attach their effort and their sacrifice to, right? It's not just a ticket. We're doing it because Jeff, our client persona, needs this particular thing solved so that they can go home earlier that day.
Exactly. And what I have also found, and that is a very clear experience, I joined a team that would not speak up in refinements. They would be very quiet, they would be very reserved. So I put a lot of care into weaving stories to involve them. And over time, I really found that they became invested. And suddenly, at some point, someone who'd barely ever spoken up, except if it was something technical, suddenly said, but I implemented this ticket over there. And that doesn't make sense with what we're doing here, because that would not work for the client. And I was so happy because I could finally see he was thinking of, this is what we're doing for the client. This is why we did these tickets. And he didn't just look at, this is a technical implementation for assigning something somewhere.
This is a great story because it's also an illustration of how narrative helps us make sense, right? The work we did is not just an accident. It's something we are doing specifically to help a customer. And because of that, now I know that that ticket I implemented doesn't make sense because it doesn't help the customer.
Exactly. I think almost everyone who worked in Scrum has seen the video of the dad talking to his kids about making a sandwich. Do you know that one?
No, but I'll put the link on the show notes. So please make sure you send that to us. So
it's amazing, and he does exactly what they write down. So if they say put peanut butter on the sandwich, he just takes the jar of peanut butter and puts it on the sandwich. Because he doesn't have context. He's acting as if he didn't know what food was. And that's exactly how a developer who doesn't understand what the context of his ticket is will do. If you have no context in why the window is the size, you cannot judge if it's 7 times too big or not. So that's really something that I also try and use to teach other POs, to give them the importance of context.
Yeah, and sprint goals can really build that narrative.
Exactly, because they center you on an idea, on this is what we want to reach.
Absolutely. Matthias, thank you for sharing this story with us.
You are welcome.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.